Okay, this whole performative male thing, what even is this? You got the matcha, listening to Clairo, reading some women's literature, collecting these awful things. You look at him and think, does this dude actually like this stuff, or is this just cosplay? And there's nothing wrong with matcha, Clairo's alright, I guess, pretty good, but not my favorite. It's that this entire style feels inauthentically curated purely for other people's perceptions, right? And I think a lot of people just see it as bait. Guys understanding and using their wardrobes as a social signifier, a tool, or in this case, sometimes almost a full-on dating strategy, instead of wearing clothes that really resonate with them, because they know it can win points and attract a certain type of person. It all feels so fake for a lot of people. And I think going even broader, it's another signal of an online shift in culture in regards to how people perceive and interact with fashion and its connotations on a day-to-day basis. I have to say, kind of empathize with these guys though. Dressing well and being attractive and the whole dating aspect of that is so competitive nowadays. You would do anything to give you an edge, and before you know it, you're grabbing a copy of Wuthering Heights, chucking it in your empty tote bag, and standing in line at Black Street for your second blueberry matcha of the day. So let's define this thing clearly. In 2025, what is a performative male in fashion, and where has all this online criticism kind of come from? For me, it's actually pretty simple, as it's never really changed in the whole 10 plus years that I've been into this whole fashion thing. It's really when you're only using clothing as projection rather than self-expression. I heard the term a while ago, wardrobe masking. You're not wearing that fit because it feels comfortable, or you love the fabric or the color, or because it reflects your taste or your favorite hobbies, you know? You're wearing it purely because you understand the connotations and you want people to perceive you in that way. You really love it because of what it can do for you in a social aspect. So this way of men using fashion as a way to attract attention is nothing new. This new performative male in 2025 is really just another version in my mind of the 2015 hypebeast era, where a lot of it was purely dressing to show how much money you have, or really how much money your parents had, because these things, they were not cheap. Possibly the most prominent example of this throughout the last 10 years or so has been the rise of vintage band tees. Plenty of guys, and girls too, wear them only to get people to think that they're into really cool and niche bands when they could only maybe name 2 songs they've heard on the radio. And this doesn't always go down well with those bands. Same goes for certain luxury logos. If you're out there buying those incredibly dull luxury branded t-shirts, then I don't even know what to say. It just all feels very surface level, like simple signals like logos, vibes, or aesthetics, instead of spending real time developing your personal style. And this is where I think a lot of the online criticism comes from, and I would say it's quite valid too, if it's purely coming from this projection aspect. Formative fashion as a whole isn't something new that has just come around in 2025 though. It's always been there, it just evolves with the current fashion trends. I'm not sure how many of you remember the slim fit days like 2013 to sort of 2017. Hedi Slimane was killing it with the slim silhouettes at Saint Laurent, and those slimmer fits became the dominant fashion trend of that time. Slim fit tees were everywhere thanks to fast fashion, and this whole slim style was kind of recontextualized by a lot of gym bros, purely as a means to show off their muscles as this kind of ultimate social signifier.
It drives me nuts when I see guys wearing t-shirts with super long sleeves. It's all about
tricep exposure.
In those specific communities of fashion, I find it very hard to believe that there were ever questions like, is this tee actually right for my personal style, or is the quality actually any good? Also just an outward projection of look how big my arms and my chest are. Fast forward a few years and the style shifts, normcore kind of took over, vintage thrifting became cool, now it's all about chill dad vibes. Ironic dad caps, Patagonia fleeces, chunky dad shoes, even though none of us doing it, and I say none of us because I loved this trend, even though none of us were actually dads. Then Gorkcore comes around and you have all the Arc'teryx beta jacket boys, not going on hikes or anything, just wearing them in the shower. Not gonna lie, that whole reactionary trend was actually kind of funny, but this is really where I think a lot of people started to realize just how performative modern online fashion is. This trend of wearing an Arc'teryx beta jacket in the shower came about as a kind of sarcastic reaction to the online criticism of buying a beta jacket in the first place if you weren't going to use it for its intended purpose. Today in 2025, the performance has shifted again. Now it's just the whole indie soft boy thing. Wide leg drapey trousers, loafers, soft color palettes, accessories a lot of the time borrowed from women's fashion, and carefully selected aesthetic hobbies. God, I hate that word so much. I've heard a lot of people comment or say that there's no real creativity or depth in fashion at the moment. They feel everyone is just kind of surface level copying each other because it's either trendy or it's deemed attractive. And I would say to that there's always been this huge group of people only looking to interact with fashion in this very simplistic way, as nothing more than a tool to be seen as trendy or stylish, or simply to attract a partner. But it's funny how this term, performative male, has only really been coined and kind of universally recognized in 2025. Not that many people, at least that I saw, were calling the awful old money trend performative, when it was possibly one of the most fake, shallow, and transparent trends in recent fashion memory. Fashion as a whole, at least in my mind, will always be inherently performative. It is an art form that is literally designed to be perceived. It will always have signals and connotations associated with it, and a large part of the enjoyment that a lot of people get from fashion is understanding those signals and those connotations. That's one of the reasons why it's so damn interesting. But I do think a lot of people are really seeing past these connotations and really understanding just how inauthentic and shallow a lot of the fashion we see is in 2025. For a lot of people, dressing well is no longer about making yourself feel great, taking from styles or brands of heritage that represent you and your favorite hobbies and interests, but it's become a how can I just use the latest trendy or most provocative fashion piece in a way that benefits me socially. Forgive me for getting kind of sciencey, but I really see this criticism stemming from an inability to categorize people based on the way they dress. Now, I'm no neuroscientist or anything, but I understand it must feel inherently awkward for our brains because we are so wired to recognize patterns and put people into categories, and we can't really do that anymore. No longer if you saw someone walking down the street wearing bootcut jeans and cowboy boots, could you assume that he has a farm or a ranching background. In the same way, if you saw someone wearing a Carhartt jacket, your brain can no longer categorize them as a laborer or an outdoor worker. And I guess that makes it all feel so shallow, especially when you get into this habit of thinking this person is only wearing this because they want me to think X about them, you know? And once you get into this frame of mind, it's very difficult because you kind of assume that everyone is doing this. I will say though that in this hyper online world that we live in, you could definitely consider everything to have some level of performance to it. The way I'm talking to the camera right now, I'm presenting or I'm performing an idea of an image of how I want you guys to perceive me. But it's also things like the millions of Instagram posts, the way we talk to people we've never met before, the way we talk to people we have met before, the way we walk down the street, the curated playlist we listen to whilst we walk down the street. But fashion only makes this idea more visible. I think people now more than ever really understand the connotations of certain fashion items and really use those to purvey or represent things about themselves which are simply not true. Right, here's where it gets tricky. I think a lot of this online criticism has also stemmed from the fact that men are now taking things that traditionally lean more feminine and using those in an effort to kind of like peacock, you know? I obviously can't speak on their behalf, but I guess it just feels very close to home in a sense, which is perfectly fair. To some, I imagine it feels like they're being deliberately misled. Before, this specifically was never really explored in fashion by men because of this massive looming insecurity of being seen as less of a man if you liked or enjoyed pieces or activities that traditionally lean more feminine. Things like accessorizing your outfits heavily, wearing bags, or I don't know, reading. I remember probably about 10 years ago when I first told my friends that I was wearing women's jeans because I really liked how they fit me, and they looked at me like I was an absolute psychopath. Now I would say it's almost pretty common to find men shopping in the women's section because it is where a lot of valuable or interesting clothing to men is produced. On one hand, this is great, right? It opens the door for men to explore different cuts or fabrics or silhouettes that they might never have done before, that were previously kind of deemed off limits. On the other hand, it's also created new ways to perform. And this is where, again, I think a lot of the criticism has come from. A lot of guys are genuinely exploring and finding new pieces that they like and that they think will enhance their personal style. But then there's the performative side of it as well. Guys deliberately shopping in the women's section and wearing traditionally feminine coded pieces purely because they know it sends a desirable kind of message. And at that point, it starts to feel really hollow because it's not about the clothes anymore. It's about the social optics. And that's really the gray area we're dancing around. So here's the question I keep coming back to. Where do you draw the line between authentic style and performance? How do you tell at a quick glance that someone is cosplaying their style? And is that such a bad thing in the first place? I would say it's not fair to see someone for the first time online or in real life, know absolutely nothing about them, and assume that their whole style is based on an algorithm you've seen on your FYP. I get plenty of people coming to the comments of my videos and say that my style feels inauthentic. And that's fair enough, you know? But I would say, how do you progress your style and have fun or try new pieces from new designers you've not tried before for the fear of being called performative or even worse, a trend chaser? I hate on these guys dressing this way and not recognize that everything in modern life is some kind of performance. I do think it's kind of hypocritical. Again, I'm not saying this is right or wrong, and I do empathize with those who feel that this is like kind of misleading as well. But honestly, that's why this whole performative male epidemic feels so relevant right now, because it's tied in with a lot of cultural aspects like dating or appropriation of styles. I guess I'm really asking, how do we navigate our identity through clothing in an era where everything feels kind of shallow and like it's made for content or an algorithm? Combine that with the fact that the fashion industry seems to be hell-bent on ruining its own self-image at the moment, with constant malpractices and ethical violations, along with many brands still charging hundreds or even thousands for absolutely mediocre products that fall apart after just a few wears. Fashion, I think, in 2025 is actually going through quite a rough time in many people's eyes. Maybe there isn't a clear answer I can give you here. Maybe fashion will always sit somewhere between performative and self-expression. Here's where you're probably expecting me to say something preachy like focus on wardrobe basics or invest in timeless pieces, and then you'll always have great style. A great piece of fashion advice. See you next week for the same thing, just in a different format. Maybe the point though isn't really to decide what is deemed performative and what is not in fashion. Maybe it's just to be more aware of your own intent when you get dressed. If you're dressing genuinely and purely because it reflects who you are, even if that's messy, inconsistent, or constantly evolving, utilizing some trendy pieces here and there, you're just on the same fashion journey as a lot of other people. And I would say that is completely authentic in my opinion. At the end of the day, people will project their own prejudices on you no matter what you wear. The only thing you can control is whether your style feels like a performance to you or whether it just feels like you. I really hope you guys enjoyed this different kind of video for me. I've been wanting to make kind of more in-depth video essay adjacent type of videos, just putting my own thoughts or perspective out on general fashion trends or themes within the current fashion climate because it is just super interesting to me. Of course, I would love to hear your thoughts though, so make sure you leave them in the comments below. I know Uniqlo C is actually dropping in a couple of days, so you can expect a video from me, and I will say there's a lot of synthetics in it. Why do they keep doing this, man? I keep putting my neck out for them and they keep doing this to me. If you enjoyed, make sure to drop this video a like and subscribe too. And if you're after more fashion content from me, you should think you'll love this video here, so go and check it out. Thanks for watching, as always, guys. I hope you have a wonderful week. I'll see you in the next one. See you then.